Welcome back to the Origin series, boys and girls. We are going into our final series of the day. Here we are taking a trip down memory lane to Group, where me and its Scoundrel, of course, we've got a lot of time invested here and lots to look forward to at Scoundrel. It's Keizo coming up against Game Lord.
Yeah, this is going to be a really I think, beyond NTNT, there is still some shuffling, still some debate about who is the Europe, and Game Lord and Team Keizo are the two biggest contenders. So this will really kind of set apart the men from the boys when it comes to the top end of the ladder.
I think at the minute, Keizo probably saying they hold that spot as they are the team currently sat in second place, qualified championship. So as you say, this one's kind of not so much a bragging rights piece, but there's definitely something to prove. Both of the teams in that top three to get those 3 spots into the championship. And we've seen some great gains for them. But now that talent is parked until tomorrow for that best of 5, this is where the spotlight really turns onto these two teams and what it is that they can do for game number 1. So let's get straight into it. At Scoundrel, talk to me about what it is that you're expecting to see in this series between these teams.
Yeah, I think realistically, there's going to be a lot of contest in the jungle. I think they've got 2 very strong junglers, and so Andre versus Foray is going to be a really interesting one specifically. As I said before, I think Team Keizo's weaknesses lie on the bottom, and Game Lord have got a relatively strong, bot lane. I think they've got a good support AD carry combo, so I expect that to be somewhere where we see a bit of attention turned to. Game Lord in general tend to sticks rather than carries, so Random seems to be more of like a for the team style player, and we've seen Acolyte rather be a bit more carry orientated in the NTNT series. There'll be interest stacks up, and you can see the Fiora ban comes through here specifically towards Acolyte, so he's not going to get his hands on that.
I mean, looking back over the game that got played a couple of days ago between Game Lord and Team Keizo, we saw the Garen in the top lane. Wukong and Lee Sin were big priority picks for them as well. But Game Lord starting things off with that Darius coming through here. Again, looking towards the top side. Last time that was picked up by Game Lord, so it feels like both a pick for themselves, but also to deny it away from the side of Team Keizo.
Yeah, the Darius is getting high priority here. It's a pick that is very easy to deal with, and I'm suddenly starting to see a lot of things from Team Keizo already that are showing like ease of dealing with Darius, like quite nicely with his ultimate. Senna, when she picks up Iceborne Gauntlet, can kite nicely against the Darius and has the root. Have the CC with the Galio. I think Game Lord have drafted a very aggressive, we need to get a him style draft here, whereas Team Keizo have gone for something that's a bit more peel back, a little bit more play from the back line, play back to front, although then they just randomly draft Olaf, so ignore that. That's sort of a big pick to deny from Game Lord. I think that's a strong pick that we generally tend to see those guys pick up, and it's going to be a Lux support, which is not something that we've seen for quite some time.
Earlier on, we did see the Olaf in the top lane in, I believe it was Group C, being used primarily to run down onto those more immobile battling towards Lux, looking towards Kaiser there. Sure, there's a lot to be excited about to see what he can do in this game. But let's wait, them is already ready. Let's get into map number 1 of this best of 3 and see how it plays out, because there's a lot of pride on the line and a shot for vengeance against No Team, No Talent tomorrow on the line for these teams.
And you'd think that both teams will want to take a stab at that. Just given the dominance of No Team, No Talent right now in the European scene, you'd think that realistically both teams are hungry to get back and try to take some confidence away from No Team, No Talent before we head to the later finals this year. I think it will be very important, to kind of at least get one little heads up over them before we head to later in the tournament.
Looking forward to the early game as well and seeing what the impact is of these junglers, because today so far across both there's been a heavy influence from junglers, especially in the early game, looking towards the likes of Sin to get themselves involved and make some things happen. Of course, you're looking towards Zephyr, though, to be doing the same on the Xin. Maybe not as mobile or as impactful as you might wager the Lee Sin would be in those first few levels once they hit level towards seeing what impact could potentially be made. But you know that when it comes to that mid-game, that's when you'll really start seeing the Xin fly.
It is one of those jungle picks that will really excel if you get ahead, but if you fall behind, he can feel very play, and especially because you're going into you've got a strong like playing Olaf top, very interesting. We don't get to see as much of that, but you've got strong kind of heavy melee presence on Team Keizo, and that's one of the things that I think Xin struggles with. Like, he's very much a ranged jungler with that ultimate being able to buy him a lot of space and a lot of invulnerability from those ranged threats. But you've got a lot of melee threats from Team Keizo here, and that's where something that Zefdim's struggling with. I love that the Lux pick from Scout into lane here from Ebu and Memorized. I think Senna, one of those picks that is very easy to put pressure on if you Lux and you can catch her in the binding. And I think it's a very risky level as well to play into a Xin Zhao because they're very gank sort of vulnerable too.
But then almost ending in disaster for the Ola to get himself back away, no problem at all. Flash going down from both of the top laners. As you might see a little bit of exposure coming in, given both of them are relatively immobile, so some focus should be coming in from the likes of the Lee Sin, of the Xin Zhao, potentially making an impact. One thing I did want to touch on looking at it is the comp coming out from Game Lord as well just screams to me, please try and engage on this, because you know it'll be an absolute nightmare if they do, given it's the Darius, it's the Xin Zhao, everything for them. This is a bit aggressive coming out of Kaizo, trying to catch on to backs away, managed to get the recall here. It does mean there'll be a bit of a waves loft though into this bottom tower for the side of Game Lord.
Just the kind of picks they've got actually lack sort of strong engage tools in their own right. Like you need to land Xin Zhao skill shots to get the off, or a Lux binding or a charm. They overall lack strong engage. It's very easy for them to peel back and kite back when they're engaged upon. And whereas Team Queso, you know, they want to try and land ultimate, the Lee Sin Galio combo that we tried to see pulled off there. So they do want to make those engages happen. And yeah, I love this on Game Lord, but they're not actually going to commit to it too hard because as you can see, Acolyte's clearing that wave out very quickly and it was a risky play to make.
As well with that W being active too, so try and dive onto when he's just over half HP, sat about that 60% mark. They are really keen to get the Darius snowballing, and understandably, right? 1 or 2 items in a mid-game team fight, he will destroy anyone who comes anywhere near him, and if nothing else, could be a parent to Acolyte just popping on that ultimate and charging his way through into the back line to try and get rid of, say, Lux, or perhaps even Bezos, depending on where it is that he goes with his ultimate, if it is a more aggressive one. Made it Scoundrel to that 4-minute mark, almost with no deaths to say that. Caster Curse comes to life. It's Show being picked off in the bot lane at perfect time because that Drake is about to come online. You're going to see the Rift Herald coming online at the same time. Lots of putting in here from the side of Kaizo.
And no one here to back up Redemption either on this bot side of the map. Now we're past, it was still pre-4 minutes, which is going to make this tower relatively tanky. And with that Lux ultimate, they should a serious amount of damage going down onto the bot lane tier 1. Dre is actually going to back off here. They have got that set up. Cloud Dragon is one of the more undervalued dragons in the game. You can just see here, it was a simple catch. Chain CC, yeah, the chain route coming out from both the Sten and the Varus there. Not much to write home about. They just managed to catch out the Lux. However, not managed to convert it into anything. And they took that back timing that's allowed Game Lord to just get onto the... And I don't really think there's a good answer here. As you can, yeah, exactly. You can already see, I think Andre might just be dead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the flash forward came forward out of the random once more. Does find a kill. Will trade his life back for it. 2 assists and a kill. Maybe not the ideal outcome for you, but they will likely trade objectives. Top side still being focused down by Kaizo. Game Lord right now showing no interest in it. Just want to put their focus instead on towards this bottom tower.
Yeah, well, they actually are going to go straight for this bottom lane tier 1. No one there to defend it, as we saw both the Varus and the Senna commit to the middle side of the map. Don't even have to drop the Rift Herald here. Game Lord are going to pick up the tier 1 on bot for free. And as we always talk about Derry, there's always like a bit of a discussion around value of first Rift Herald if you end up losing the first tower anyway. And that means you've kind of cut back on the power of the Rift Herald. Don't get me wrong, it's not useless. There are still things that you want to achieve with Rift Herald, including breaking mid lane tier 1 to open up the map, or creating a bit of a natural priority in a lane for that second dragon spawn. But Game Lord have got dragon, and they picked up first tower whilst only trading Rift Herald. That is an excellent first 5 minutes of the game here for Game Lord.
Just a very smart response, I think, is the best way to describe it coming out. A bit of a replay on this top side. Look, I mean, Moore's got away for a second, I think, and the flash coming over. Too late once you got those passive stacks already set up at 5 and almost was in a position to potentially turn it back around onto Acolyte, who was looking pretty low himself, without that ultimate reset being there because it wasn't the tool of death for Lee Sin. Nothing else really to come off the back of it.
But that is another tower in the bank here for Game Lord. They are going to trade that bot lane tier 1, so it should be tower for tower overall. You can see that Vejos not able to clear that out. A lot of actually prioritizing Ahri here. I think often when you're going into Team Queso, because you're going into Ruiz, you might see people sort of take Ahri away. I think that's part of the reason that we saw Game Lord do that. Ruiz is a very strong Ahri player. It looks like Acolyte might actually get caught out here, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the ult comes through and it's pretty much done. But you are right. We saw what Ruiz could do on that champ. The Ahri, absolutely terrifying. So even if not strictly your strongest pick, it is about denying him, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think, especially if you think that their mid laner have the same kind of efficacy on other picks. I think it's a strong tactic either way, but you can actually see he's doing all right. He's got Rod of Ages finished up at 6 minutes into the game. He's got 1-0-0. Hasn't exactly had the map impact that you'd expected Darius to have, but realistically, there hasn't really been many opportunities to kind of flex your globals in this game right now. It's been very split, very kind of like individual skirmishes, and there is only a small amount of gold separating these two teams as we get to that 7-minute mark. And I think we have seen that Rift Herald go down as well. So for that second, okay, Andre.
Yeah, caught out of position there, melted down. You saw the combo coming a little bit late for a reason. I was going to comment on maybe you see Acolyte charge into the back line, the Galio ults onto him, uninterrupted, and they turn that into one hell of a wombo. But with one being burnt down, Andre here, there isn't really anything else they can worry about fighting for now. Besides, it's not the end of the world, but could start looking to square up a little bit of pressure here if they wanted to get this mid-wave pushed in and try and pressure in towards Keizo's inner tower. But I think clear right now, just a little bit too strong.
I think that's one thing that Keizo have got really going in their favor. Well, actually, both teams have got going in their favor. You've got really wave clear. Both Lux and Ari wave clear really nicely. Senna Varus wave clear really well, as well as the Galio having the Winds of War that does the same thing. It is, pending no huge team fight wins to actually get that opportunity to shove in a wave and take down any major objective. Mid lane prio is firmly in favor of Team Keizo right now, that because of that Varus being so strong at pushing waves in. That will be important for the next dragon that's spawning, Derry. 20 seconds the Inferno. I expect both teams to get into position. You can already order resetting to get onto the map. We don't have teleport for Darius, and he is committing to the top side of the map here.
Yeah, that's the big concern, I think. I mean, you maybe see both of them hang up towards that TP on side, so it could just be a 4 versus 4 skirmish around the straight, to be honest with you. But it's all about the engage. Who first? Where does it start? It's going to be the Ari going in, but missing the charm. Good dodge away, but otherwise that could have ended in disaster. If the binding followed up from the Lux, for example, things wouldn't have gone well. So the dance resumes for now. The Rift Herald is coming out to put down some more pressure. Is it going to be enough to guarantee them getting this streak away?
Yeah, I've got the priority, like you said. They've got the Olaf here who's going to drop into the team fight.
Oh, here we go. Yeah, charging the way through. Walks away with a slither of HP. No, laid out by the Lux. However, what else can they find off the now? Not an awful lot. A lot of both blows being exchanged, but everyone limping away rather than dying throughout the fight. Ultimately, it's Keizo left dominant force in this one. They secure the Drake. Andre picking that one up, but look at the mid lane coming through. Really smart counterplay coming out of Game Lord, and should be able to...
Yeah, they'll be able to pick up that mid lane tier 1. They'll escape with very small amounts of HP in their favor. But look how quickly we might just see mid lane tower for mid lane tower here. Although I say that Redemption and Zephyr looking for the in-game.
I make this one happen. Yeah, can they burn through the Galio in the front line? He's a bit of a tank, and he's going back in again. The dunk comes through. One does go the way, but it's traded back and forth between the two. It kind of stops at that kill coming out for Andre. No other kills being traded, but the teams again flashing health bars everywhere. The laser not quite what they expected. Oh, and in goes the Ari, not quite able to do enough, but lockdown might be able to get finished off. Absolutely not. Olaf not able to catch coming in.
Yeah, you can just see though that team fight. I wonder if we do get a chance to have a look back at that, but particularly I think what you saw was a lot of resources being expended on the Olaf, and by the time that the Olaf had dropped, everybody else really couldn't get into range of just the consistent range. Back again. Oh no, this is a little bit later. My bad. Never mind. Yeah, nice catch here from the Galio. Sets up a double kill really nicely off the back of Andre, just getting that red away on to random. But the power of the Senna and the Varus as this game scales up, just able to keep the rest of that team at arm's length once the losing abilities have kind of already been used.
That's it, right? It's good teams here as well to keep the threats at bay on either side. At 5 and 4, still a 2.5k gold lead for Game Lord, currently established and in place. 1 Drake apiece, 3 Game Lord. That's where you see much of that gold coming from. And as we get towards this kind of mid, heading in towards the later stages of here, about another 5 minutes or so until we really hit that point of the later game team. Looking across the comps, what's currently standing out to you is the big picks on side in terms of items here, because you're seeing, for example, quite an off-tank that we're very used to seeing coming out of the Olaf here. Maybe not going to be able to beef all the way through to the back line through that counter-engaged front line with the Xin and the Darius. But if he gets in there and starts managing to wail away on one of those carries, we know how that'll go. And speaking of carries, down the Ari in the top lane.
Yeah, nice pickup here, because it should allow them to pick tier 1 for free. Good bit of gold injection back over towards Team K. So really like a boxing match this game, just taking any kind of edge that they can. Looks like Zephyr's going long flank though, looking for a way to set up and back up random here. You can see the rest of Team K are trying to buy time, allow Acolyte to get to this fight, trying to keep them at arm's length wherever they can, but that's not what you want.
I mean, have LA range not the one that you want at all? Should find himself going down here, and they've managed to sandwich them out. In comes Acolyte for the support, but is it too little too late? Apparently not. The Barbarian going a little bit nuts. No, low HP everywhere, but the heal then was enough. They might be able to burn their way through the Olaf here. Rui's looking low. Random going back in for the finish. That's an absolute clean up from the side of Game Lord in what looked pretty dicey at points, but they make it work.
And they're going to go straight for Baron off the back of this as well. It really felt like Acolyte had the chance to turn this on it, not have that ultimate available, and got minced right at the start of that fight. Chain CC'd up, and unfortunately was able to really make his mark felt in that small skirmish. Everybody else, unfortunately, just a little bit disjointed. Back at it here, unfortunately, as you mentioned, Memorize getting caught out. Not what you wanted. He was just in. You really don't want to be get Darius hooked. He didn't even get bound up by nothing. Just straight up Darius hooked there from Memorized. And that was a beautiful Lux ultimate. Watch Acolyte here. Doesn't have his ultimate available. Looking to try his mark felt, but the chain CC comes through. If this was an ultimate, Olaf with ultimate, it might have been a different fight. I've been able to clean up more effectively. Moments away from really turning that fight on its head. Another pick here onto Andre and Team K struggling versus Game Lord right now. And you can really see Random. We talked a little bit about how the melee focus from Team. Oh my God, it's disgusting.
This will be another one.
We talked about how the melee focus from K been good into Zinzao, but it's not very good into Darius. That's really what Darius loves. Like people that are melee, really big heals off with that decimate. Obviously then able to find targets to ultimate with, and that's a really nice pickup from them because I think they saw how Queso was looking to set up to be, and Random was just able to pick up one of his best champions because it fit this composition so well.
Early on, mind you, as well, that's saying, ultimately, what does a Darius want? He wants a team that is going to engage into him, and he has been gifted, wanting to charge in. Lee Sin wanted to play for a kick and burn all of his cooldowns in the process. The Galio to pile in it on top as well. It is just working in Random's favor so well, and they prioritize that win condition in the early game with the constant presence coming out of Zephyr. At this point, they're running away with it. A Scoundrel 13-5, a 10k gold lead at the 14-minute mark. Hard to see how Kaizo fight their way back into this.
I think it might be difficult, but one thing that they've got going in their favor is, oh no, well that's not going in their favor. Just another nice little charm there from Vejos. We'll take a look back. Is this where Andre gets picked off? Oh no, that must have happened earlier. Sorry, I think I got a little confused. I was briefly perplexed by why we were replaying to what was a Lee Sin back. Never mind.
It's a weird form of Inception when you're not sure what's a replay anymore.
Exactly. I'm a little bit confused about what's a replay and what isn't. Memorized, though, is probably one of the key things that I think is going in favor of Team Queso. They don't have a lot of scaling, but they do have a Varus, and they scale pretty nicely. Unfortunately, Olaf and Lee drop off the planet. Obviously, Galio is kind of a moderate scaler, but really a mix of damage and utility that he brings. But both the Varus and the Senna can scale quite nicely here, but specifically that Senna, you're going to get through souls will be a key way of trying to accelerate this. He's trying to find your way back into this game, because that's the one that you really want to keep your distance, that massive Senna range to keep your distance versus the Darius. I'm not really sure what Andre is looking for here. We got a fight.
Or redemption, potentially. I mean, the Zonya's coming from there because everyone else forced to flash away off the back of it. Even with things potentially looking to go the way of Kaizo, shut down pretty much immediately in redemptions and ult on side if required. So a good bit of poke coming out of Game Lord there, just stepping in and letting them know exactly where they're at. They're inside their own blue jungle, but no, right now it is Game Lord's jungle with 15 seconds to go until this Baron back online. Looking towards Andre, who in this spot won't quite get caught out. Support coming in from the Galio, but that is one of their big crucial engage tools. We see Galio into the Olaf ultimate coming off, and how that would combo so well together. That's now been shut down because Rus is forced to use the ultimate to keep his team alive.
And that's a really important one for these big. Oh, wait a second. Are we catching out randomly? I mean, I would be might be able to find the dunk.
I mean, he finds it, and it's onto the jungler. That's now the rest of the team can focus on doing Baron. No one's here to smite steal it away. 50 HP with the smite, one of those ones you look at and say on a different day, maybe that goes the other way, but no one was present from Kaizo to even contest. And it's an easy closeout for Game Lord. Now, yes, it's a 4 versus 4, but they've got Baron, and that is a juicy wave sat in the top lane.
Yeah, and it's quite difficult right now to clear these waves effectively, and you can see that the bot lane providing a little bit of distraction here for Team Queso means that Game Lord will bounce in this top lane inhibitor tower. They're not going to be able to go down and towards the Nexus. They're very happy to just have these 2 permanent objectives off the map because, of course, in the next few minutes, we're going to be having that Elder Dragon spawn, which will be another big point of contention. I really feel like if you are planning to get back into this game, you have to make that stand at the Elder Dragon here for Team
Yeah, that 2 inhibitor tower down point is the bit you start to worry, right? It becomes incredibly hard to get any kind of push in those out, anything that can give you a bit of fight back, and you know that bottom one is likely to go flying very shortly as well. We're touching on 74 stats currently on the center. It's on the losing side, effective as otherwise it might be, but we saw yesterday how once you start getting towards that mark, you become an absolute terror with the range that you can build. Also, I think it's a little bit too little, a little bit too late. At least it's something to know that that's still building up on side.
He's like that crucial break point where you really, random.
That's the catch you're looking for as well, burning their way. I mean, random is still at this point. No one has gone down on either side just yet. Again, more dance back and forth. Andre full HP off to the side, but they can do nothing to stop the third tower going down. Zefter potentially a bit too far for a couple of seconds, but Game Lord got what they came for. Their tower, and they've walked away with their backs turned, their attention now turning towards the Drake.
They really have complete map pressure. Baron, a single inhibitor drop. This is going to be very difficult for Team Kaiser to fight. Even just get area around the Dragon. They're going to be able to solo it with the Kaiser whilst they have and the Lux running interruption here. Don't really know if Team Kaiser can actually fight this one because they're going to be having minions pull their base. They'll always have to be concerned about a potential teleport as well. As you can see, is coming through. And Game Lord just very happy to allow Kyle to work whilst those charms and the rest of the team run distraction around this Elder Dragon.
That's what you want to do, right? To keep him away, stop them going in to try and go for the steal. And sure enough, Zefter's the one now in the front line, though, trying to burn their way. The Olaf, who does go dangerously low, but not quite finished off and off to the side, potentially getting the assassination. But it's the Darius in the front line that's the one to keep an eye on, not the one who walks away with the kills. That will be the Lux, and Andre up there watching the rest of his team fall around him. The last man standing floor of Game Lord. Game number 1, comfortably going the way of Game Lord.
Yeah, they looked very strong here. I love that Darius draft into a heavy melee composition, and they were able to very early stage here. I think, unfortunately, there was just 2 different thematics in the Team Queso composition. You have a Varus and a set range. They want to play a little bit more front to back, and then you just randomly stick the potential lane matchup into the Darius. You technically should win that early lane before level 5 especially, but it didn't work out in terms of what the comp wanted to do. Neither did the Lee Sin particularly work in that sense. It was a little bit of a disjointed comp from Queso this time around, and Game Lord drafted quite intelligently to deal with some of the major threats that they had in these team fights.
We talk about that a little bit further, because you speak about this bot lane, it did start out well, right? They had that catch potential, it came through wonderfully for them, and you could the follow-up was these long-range carries playing in the back of the center and the Varus, with the front line going crazy, with the Olaf coming in off the back of a Galio, or Galio 1 on top of the Olaf engage, to control the early game, but it didn't really transpire that way. That first blood down in the bot lane, off the back, nothing else really went their way, because we saw that's when it became the Zefter and Rando.
And river control was so good from Game Lord pretty much all game round. There just wasn't enough good vision in the key areas of the map. Andre got caught way too much. You can see Random, even though Game Lord were actually able to find something in, you could still see just how powerful Random was into this melee comp. Ruiz, unfortunately, away from Ari on just meant that he wasn't quite able to have the impact that he maybe wanted. I mean, Memorize just way too close. I think that's the story of the game. They never really managed to play the comp range the way they wanted to. And unfortunately, it meant that they were getting pulled into these scrappy skirmishes that really, when Acolyte didn't have that ultimate available, were just far too easy for Game Lord to win.
A little bit too comfortable as the game went on, even though it looked like Kaizo were in there to win it, at least early in the game. Talking of next game, though, because game 2 will be ready for us very, very soon. We're expecting to see in the draft what needs to change between both sides here, because as we always say, the onus is on the losers to be the ones that change. The winners really want to.
Yeah, well, I think, again, because I imagine sides might switch. I mean, it really depends on what case they want to choose. Blue side has had a strong advantage from some of the other series that we've seen throughout the Origin series. I would say I think you need to rethink if you're Queso. Like, if you're drafting Varus, you need to play, draft a comp that's able to keep the enemy at range for. Like, I'd love to have seen, I think Gragas got banned, but you need to draft a comp that's more comfortable playing at range, is a little bit more counter engage rather than straight up engage, because you do want to kind of at least buy space for that Varus to just throw those consistently. Senna, again, loves to play that range, loves to play these team fights slower, whereas I think Team Queso just got too hyphy. They were too dragged into the brawling type quick engages that put both Varus and Senna into awkward positions, and also played right into the Darius's hands from Game Lords, which is what we saw in a lot of those skirmishes.
Let's see if Queso can fix mistakes going into game 2. It's time, because it's ready. Game 2 then, Some changes to be made for Kaizo, as we have just discussed, but for Game Lords showing their prowess in the mid to late game, Kaizo are the ones who I feel really need to be taking that lead in lanes or in the early game to get the snowball going that will keep them ahead of game.
Yeah, I think, you know, we saw yesterday that Kaizo were able to take games off NTNT, and so they clearly have what it takes to be, you know, at that level required to take down people like Game Lord as well. We'll say that a little caveat to that is I think that NTNT's draft that game was absolutely garbo. But I think really, you know, Kaizo were a good team, especially strong in the jungle and top side. I felt like Andre had a uncharacteristically poor game, which is weird because he absolutely slapped me in solo years ago. But no, he had an uncharacteristically poor game. And I think, you know, being one of the main drivers for their win conditions here, especially a top tier jungler like Lee Sin, the early impact, if you're not making your presence felt in the first 5 minutes of the game, you are going to struggle, I think, to come back and have more of an impact as they get towards that mid and late game stages.
Well, let's take a look at what the picks are. You speak about that early game pressure if it needs to come through in the draft for Kaizo. Akali, as it is always be here in Group A, followed up by the most staple bans that we're currently seeing this patch.
And not even just competitive. I think solo queue Akali has been the #1 ban champion for quite some time now. She's ridiculous strong. Corki going to get taken away. We will see the Ziggs and the Gragas again. It's very interesting to me that Game Lord are banning Gragas. I know likes to play it, and I know like Memorize likes to play it in support as well, but Random is a big Gragas player. In fact, I think Gragas is Random's #1. So, you know, I think it's interesting that Game Lord are choosing to ban that themselves. Maybe they're scared of a case of Gragas first pick, but Xin Zhao and it will be Galio, but Camille left open, and Kaizo very happy to lock that in.
I mean, the Gragas ban just screams to me there are other things we want to be playing here that we feel he can have a greater impact on, and for them, we hope at least it's not going to be Fiora in the jungle, as you alluded to a little bit yesterday, that it should be this Fiora in the top lane, Random potentially matching up against the Camille.
I think, especially because Acolyte is locked in the... Andre is locked in the Kha'Zix here. That is, I think, right now, his most played champion in solo queue, and so he's going back to comfort for a really important game. Kha'Zix is in a strong spot. I don't think Kha'Zix is in as strong of a spot in competitive as he is in solo queue, if I'm completely honest with you, especially the Lee Sin. But the fact that Senna's left open and has got it through to this stage of the draft might make us see would go for a true fasting Senna. I actually really don't like with a ranged AD carry. I think it's actually a really bad lane setup. I think if you're going to play Senna, you play Senna with a type of carry in the bot lane. And the fact that Zed locked in...
That Orianna bot?
That might be fast Orianna bot with Zed mid, which, mind, again, you do lose level. You do lose level here. I will talk about it a little bit more in game. You lose level advantage here, but obviously you do get that, which is what Orianna does need as well.
I like it. I like it. You know what I like more? The fact that Game 2 is ready. Let's get into it. The Rift is ready. We'll see exactly what it is that's bot lane. We are expecting it will be that Orianna heading on down. Join up with the Senna. Indeed, that looks to be the case. Okay, as we expected coming into it, Scoundrel. Talk to me about this matchup then. How do you think it plays out for the Senna with the Orianna outside of clearly tons coming in against a Nami and a Kai'Sa?
Well, I think you've got a clear range advantage. That's the first clear range advantage. You match the sustain of the Nami, if like a little bit less, but you really are matching that sustain of the Nami. Is that I think does make Orianna relatively strong in the bot lane is that ability to deal a lot of damage with the attack dissonance combo from a very early stage. And I think the trading potential of the Nami will be limited in a sense. So yeah, I think it's going to bully, and you should be able to bully this lane and kind of have a free way to farm soul. You should be able to use that range and just constantly proc Senna's passive to gain souls from both the Nami and the Kai'Sa. But overall, I think it's going to be a relatively subdued lane. I'm not expecting a lot of kills from that Senna and Orianna.
You say that now until Zephyr starts turning up and they do get the lockdown coming out of Redemption. That's to potentially be excited about. But as you say, maybe it's going to be a peaceful one. We'll keep an eye on it and see how it shapes up. I love the top lane matchup that we've got, by the way. Camille, Fiora, always super explosive, as we know that it can be. And in the late game, if they're given enough time in the side lanes, they just turn into absolute monsters in every single team fight.
Should, on paper, be an absolutely one-sided matchup for Fiora. It's a very difficult matchup for the Camille to win. Rui's actually flushed. I think he's dead. Yeah,
he's dead. Yeah, the Ignite came through as well. No way he walks away.
A good little pick up there, and you can see Zephyr. I think Zephyr's been criminally sort of in the Origin series from the last times that I've seen him. He's a jungler that deserves to get his name out there a little bit more than he's been able to. This series showing you why Zephyr is in a strong spot. You can see Random just playing a little bit safe, but the lane is such a grin for him right now, and he doesn't want to miss out on experience. He doesn't have the sup on this lane wave, but luckily Acolyte pushes it back very quickly for him, so he'll be able to stay under the tower.
Absolutely. You can see here how this all played out as well. I think Ruiz knew straight away, completely out of position as well. I mean, the wall was down on the bottom side, expecting to there. Instead, Bowden coming in from the top side, completely unawares of where it was coming from, and that resulted in blood. A good start for Game Lord, carrying on as they ended the last game with a small gold lead here, and a great start for the mid and jungler.
Yeah, Zed is another one of those champions that you do start to see more of right now in the current meta. I think this is an interesting gank from Andre because we have that ultimate available.
Yeah, I mean, the double out as well, so he can't exactly walk away, but he wants to go in again. Guess who they go for? The one who's not. It's going to be the Ahri. Gets taken down. Maybe looking to try and trade something back, and they do find the Zed in response. Andre, enough damage coming out there to think comes back, but like you mentioned, that level 5 was there, and it works out wonderfully in their favor.
Yeah, I think a 1-for-1 situation, though, is good, especially if you're injecting gold.
Oh,
Andre.
Kick. Goodbye. Easy peasy.
Easy peasy, Zefta on a roll. And that's why that Kha'Zix's not so strong and competitive, especially versus a well-coordinated jungler with Lee Sin. I think it's a difficult matchup to make work in your favor. But yeah, as you said, level 5 coming up for Zed. The one thing that Ahri's got going in favor in this particular matchup is that when the Zed uses his ultimate, you can charm him straight out of it. It's very obvious when he's going to appear on top of you, and it's something that works for the Ahri pretty much every time. But Zed in a strong spot right now overall because of the Seralda's Grudge edition. It's item absolute rush here for most Zeds, if not second item, and it is such a spike for him in general because you use your ultimate of your abilities and you instantly slow me, so more of your abilities and more of your thing.
It's a bit of a kicker as well. I mean, the fact that it's got the 30% armor pan on it with a 45 A is pretty nutty. And don't, of course, forget that 20 ability haste stacked on top. We absolutely laugh in there because every single one of those stats is basically a dream coming in for a Zed. But the Ghost Blade, the first one, of course, you expect to be finished off. But watch as we step further through the game, because the same normally for a Senna as we get into the mid stages of the game as well. So potentially lots of slows, lots of disruptive abilities coming out. The one thing that kind of concerns me, I think, for Game Lord more than anything, really any massively hard CC on the team. Outside of, say, the Zed route coming out of Redemption, it's a bit limited in that department I'm concerned about. You might wager the same on the other side, but at least there's Ahri Charm into Bubble, for example. But for me, if nothing else, it's a very scrappy game full of things like slows, but less so in the department of hard CC.
No, I think you're pretty much on the money when it comes to pure team fighting capabilities in Game Lord. But I think with Fiora, you're not really looking for pure team fighting capabilities. You're looking for smaller skirmishes. You're looking for side lane pressure. Yeah, you can already see. Andre has turned up, though.
I mean, this will be a 3 versus 2 on the tower, still able to get across comes the shield from the back, but the burst damage is a bit too much. One goes down, but reinforcements have. This could be a cleanup. Game Lord punished for their overcommitment to this dive, and it's a double kill coming in for the kind of person you want that gold on. It's going to be.
And there is nothing that Game Lord is getting in response here either. You've got both Redemption and Skau just farming in their side lanes. Even end up losing this tier 1 turret on the top for their attempted dive. It's risky to dive a Camille as well. No matter if you're 3-manning, no matter if you're Camille, it's very slippery. You could take a look here, though. It was telegraphed from Game Lord. They knew exactly what was happening here, Queso, and they get a nice kick. They managed to take out Andre again. It is still a very difficult dive to a lot of work. Too random on the top side, and honestly, you can see a huge commit for Absence as well. 14K.
This is the thing that really punished GK in their game earlier on against Cut, is trying to force plays when they were ahead that they really didn't need to make. This time, at least, they do get one kill. You gotta be careful that Ibu, and in comes the Ahri as well still. Just narrowly misses out, but the Ignite is there. Cool guys don't look at explosions. They also don't look at fire, as down goes the Zed.
Knew that he was able to get that with no tier 1 tower to protect him. It was a very easy little tap of the Ignite button to secure the kill. Again, though, in competitive, it's not really about the kills per se, it's about what you're getting from them. And right now, both teams just really taking kills for the sake of that little extra gold injection, rather than anything map right now, which you can see only one tower having dropped. Still a relatively even game, only about 700 gold separating the two teams right now. One person that we are going to need to is Skau. He's basically been out of this game, farming in the bot lane by himself. Majority has picked up a very early stasis enchant and has finished up his Seraph as well. So those are not really item spikes that are massively impressive in terms of damage for the Orianna. I'm going to be a little careful here, Acolyte, but they're not massively damage items for the Orianna. Really, you're waiting for that Leandries to be completed and the Rabadons that you want to look for. You can see 5 souls here for Redemption. That's quite slow on the souls, actually. I'd say a good barometer in general. You're having a if you get 20 souls by 4 minutes. So this is a relatively slow Senna game for Redemption here.
guess you've got to also consider the fact that in this game going on, there's some roaming work. Acolyte may be in trouble here. Great connect on the Q that might get bounced back onto the side. But let's not forget as well, you and I saw this a couple of days ago where Senna was at say 7 minutes. We were like, man, that's really... By the time we got to the 14-minute mark, that had double or tripled up to being 60. So it is possible that teams can get there. It just really accelerates in the mid-game as the skirmishes really start to kick off, free to kind of roam and get involved in collecting those stacks.
In general, what you'll start to see Senna do is like mirror jungle camps to ensure that she's able to pick the free jungle. Oh my god.
That from Andre, damn.
He's got 2 items. I mean, that's not even only 2 items. He's got 2 items. That's actually pretty impressive. I think he's the only person in the game to have 2 items. Has clearly skipped out on his boots, but he's got 2 and he's hurting. Yeah,
I mean, that one was out the bush as well, so of course you get the Dust Blade too, so fair enough. And Show, as we know, down sat there on just the 1 item. Shout or Show? Honestly,
mate, I literally don't know. I just keep
I want to say
Shout.
it's Show. It's for saying Show, but at this point, I'm not going to ask. I'm too scared. See what it builds up into, though, because he has, of course, got the fully stacked here on the go. In goes the dive. Andre straight into the middle. Not normally where he gets, but it works out just fine. 1 kill comes through for them. Double hopping himself away back to safety, and now down in the front line. Zefta, if my mind's telling me no, his body's telling him yes. All the way through to a low HP member and gets himself killed off the backside of it. 2 members down, and here comes Vejos. This one is all down to Ibu by himself. Now the question is, who gets the kill? The answer, Orianna.
They're going to drop that Rift Herald. It won't quite get in. It is a 2-for-1 overall, but the Ocean Drake, the Mountain Drake and the Cloud Drake now up by Team Queso. It means the Infernal's next, and it will be an Ocean this time round. But actually, I think if you're Game Lord, I think you have huge scaling advantage if you're Game Lord here, especially because you have a Senna Orianna. I think you're okay. You know, you're only 1,200 gold behind. You're not that bothered about sort of low impact dragons. If you take a look back here, realistically, despite all of the might that are happening in this fight right now, I'm not really sure why Game Lord even fight. Like, they were well out of position for Dragon. They were way too Dragon. Yeah, okay, maybe they thought they had a team fight advantage using the Orianna, but I'm just not really sure why they wanted to fight. It just seemed like a really stupid fight to act, if I'm completely honest with you, especially because at this stage of the game, you're still scaling up those core components of your composition.
Oh, I mean, there's the burst coming through that you love to see out of us. The 1 member, in this case, Acolyte, the one falling by the wayside. You want to touch on, though, Andre in that previous fight. I mean, look, I know the guy's got 2 items, but when he dived in like that, I was so nervous. Almost got saved by Zefta and his kit coming away. The Kha'Zix was getting out, and rather than burst him down, they opted to kick him away. He managed to escape with his life off the back of it. A misplay if he wanted to by Zefta, but here comes their focus onto the bottom tower. For rounds to do anything about it, Game Lord will pick up a tower and keep that goal super narrow. It's only 200 gold between these 2 teams.
I'll be completely honest with you. If I ever see a card to face tank 5 people without any isolation bonuses, I'm like, God, that is a soul bonanza for redemption there. I ever tried to see a Kha'Zix like face tank 5 people in a team fight, I'm worried, if I'm completely honest with you. But yeah, looks like it was a charm onto redemption. He's going to end up going down. Nice little pick off by Ruiz. Again, we have mentioned before, if Ruiz gets the opportunity to play Ahri, he's going to play Ahri. And this game, obviously, when the chips are down, has picked it up.
Again, of course, picked it away. Great charm lands again, showing again his strength. Fiora blocking out a lot of that damage with the riposte. And in comes the tidal wave. No one going down, but a lot of damage members on the side of Gain to back away. Kaiser should have the run of the map here for a couple of minutes.
Oh, they were just looking to defend that mid lane tier 1, though. They knew that they had to burn resources to do it, but it's important to keep that alive for as long as you can, because that really keeps your ability to have control around objectives. If you have that tier 1 up, you always have an area of respite where you can back to ensure that you're able to reset towards Baron, get towards Infernal Drake. If you don't have it, the enemy's allowed to much deeper vision into your jungle, and it makes it much riskier for you to set up for objectives and step up to actually. So I think it's a sensible decision to commit to keep that alive, especially as the Infernal Drake is about to spawn. Your approach to the Infernal Drake that much easier to make happen.
Absolutely, okay. A terrible spot either side, still very, very close when you look at the golden side of things. And the scariest thing is, Ruiz isn't going to be too getting that. In fact, he's just bought the death cap, just finished it off, so that kind of territory. A bit of a silly pickup on the bottom side here as well. Ibu in a space he really shouldn't have been. Picked up by the Lee Sin and by the Fiora. Too close from pulling that one back.
No, I think realistically that... Oh, no. Why did you stay random? I mean, if they get... If Zefta can get the kill here, looks like they're going to take out Memorized. He's just straight up dead. If Zefta can get the kill Ruiz, that'll be a really nice pickup. It should be a free Infernal Drake, realistically.
Should be a free because no ult on the Ahri means a lot of that power is missing the ability. And sure enough, Zefta collects it back. So Bit of a clown for your pinata party in the bottom lane at Scoundrel. Members being traded on both sides, and now it's Zefter that's in trouble. He's the one being caught. TP coming through. This is where you back away, Redemption. You tend not to stay for these kind of fights, and Andre, sure enough, should be able to pick free until the Z comes in for a bit of support. So what could have been a Drake going across their way is no longer. These 4 members of Game Lord coming in are going to be able to fight it away. They can't do it because they don't have a jungler, but at the very most, they can deny it away from Kaiser.
I think that's important, just denying it from Kaizo here. I do like the ability of Game Lord to just say, nope, okay, we could try and burst this out. We have a man advantage, but it could very easily get stolen. So we're not going to make that happen. And now we find a reset again for this big neutral objective. You can see the Team Kaizo, because they've seen Zed at show top, they are going straight in for this, and they'll get it for free. Unfortunately, Game Lord may have had to take that risk realistically. They weren't able to reset and get back onto the map. And Redemption, what are you doing? Is that just is that potentially Baron? It almost certainly looks like mid lane tier 1.
I mean, nice little ult coming through just to do a bit of tickle damage onto the side of not enough that's going to stop the tier 1 going across. That's the second time, by the way, that he's been caught out in the mid lane area. You know, you're against the Kha'Zix, you're against the Camille. They will jump onto any isolated member as soon as they can. And in this case, you are the prime target with 0 mobility, no real ability to protect yourself either. Just not good. However, a couple of times we've seen the Zed finding 1 or 2 back onto the other side. However, that gap is now slowly starting to form, currently bubbling up to be about 2k in favor of Kaizo and 3 Drakes.
Why on earth, though, are you there as Redemption? I get that you're soul clearing, right? You're trying to absorb as many souls mid lane. Yeah, but like, is that really, like, do you want to commit that much of yourself to ward on like side river when no one is actually even positioned around Baron? It just feels like a weird place for Redemption to be. I think he's given away too much this game by being caught in those kinds, and I think that's a problem here for Game Lord, especially because he is really a continuous and sort of ranged damage output. If he gets taken out, like, that's a big part of their team fight gone.
Here we go then. Engage coming in for either side. Oh my god, of course Zefter goes in. Why wouldn't Zefter go in? Maybe has the ult to chase forward, goes for that, tries to get the finish off, but no. Zefter walking away with a slither of HP, not able to be burnt out, and now it's the Zed's turn. The Ignite coming through, being chased all the way down, but not enough to get finished out. Not forced to flash away, but I thought he was for a second or two. Still holds on to the ult. Ignite down on the Ahri. Some has been removed.
Unfortunately for Game Lord, Team Kaizo aren't quite strong enough to just straight up force the Baron here. Zefter is going to get locked up. I think that's already propped just by face checking here. Game Lord making too many of these silly errors. And that's one of the problems when you lose your tier 1 in mid. That is the kind of pressure Ahead was able to exert. They can just walk into your jungle and set up, you know, I guess ganks that you maybe aren't expecting, but you just can't face check at this stage of the game. It's just not something that you can get away. And that is a useless item. Yeah, exactly. That is, I mean, what are you doing?
I mean, getting caught out and neutrally, it's going to keep on happening as well because they aren't learning their lesson. Now it's Zefter going back in again and getting hyper aggressive. Going to find burnt down. Game Lord, too many mistakes to count in these later stages of the game. The bug's going to get squashing instead of big for once. It's going to be an ace coming through for Kaizo, and they could even look for the game end here. They've got the mid lane wave at Scoundrel. There's at least the inhibitor going down. I expect this to be game.
It's very close to game for Team Kaizo here, and just punishing silly mistakes from not just a member on Game Lord, but every member on Game Lord walking to their death when they shouldn't be. This is a vector to find their way back into this series, and it puts everything on the line for this third game.
Oh dear. Okay, well, a lot to be risked out there. Well, that's the number 1 at Scoundrel to walk away with. Ruiz not allowed to be a thing. Either you pick it away for yourself again, or again, because he is an absolute terror on that pick, even coming up against a Zed.
Yeah, I think I truly believe that that you take that Ahri away from him. If you're not taking that Ahri away from him, then clearly you need to ban it, because I think it's something. And I'm going to be honest, it's not because I think that the Ahri is absolutely OP here. I think it's just because it's too comfortable for Ruiz. I think you put him on something less comfortable, you allow them more, and that works out more. I think unfortunately this game round, Game Lord just had some poor decisions. I think they got a little bit too hyped around their top. I think unfortunately the matchup that should have been very Random favored was not. Random wasn't able to do as much as he would have liked, I think, in that and I think that, again, too many people getting caught out randomly. Redemption just out of position too much in these team fights as well. That was really the name of the game for me, especially as we that late game.
Yeah, it's too many being picked off, and we knew it was a pick comp as well. We spoke about that early on, that with the 3 picks they've got in the Kha'Zix, the Camille, and the Ahri, they want to be making those kind of plays. Really, to kind of look after himself, playing on the Kaiser, and sure, isolated and picked off a couple of times. But this game wasn't really about the carries in the bot lane. It was all about the focus in the mid lane and the jungle. A little bit towards the topsiders as well. But we've said about the focus in the jungle being a thing. Definitely felt like it in this game as well.
Zefter felt like he had the edge early on, right? It really felt like I mean, I think even for the most that had a really strong game on the Lee Sin, but it was just some decision-making in team fights that didn't quite go his way. Andre was heavily punished in the early game. Zefter doing exactly what you're supposed to do versus a Kha'Zix, but the problem is that it was these kind of mistakes. There were too many face checks, too many silly errors from Game Lord that just allowed Queso to punish them. And all credit to Queso, they absolutely punished them. They had the good vision control. They were setting up for these mistakes. So you've got to give credit to where credit's due for Queso. But I think Game Lord were making pretty serious errors towards the latter half of this.
Absolutely. Well, errors made by either side in the first 2 games of this series. It means, of course, we go to game 3. So let's get into it. All the way to 3 to decide which team gets to face off against No Team, No Talent in that best of 5 banger coming up for you guys tomorrow. But here, for Queso versus Game Lord, there are questions to be asked. We've already spoke about a number of them, focusing again on that Ahri in the mid lane. Does it get banned away? Does it get picked away by the side of Game Lord? Only one thing remains, and that is to get into pick and ban to find out, it's Scoundrel.
Let's absolutely take a look here. I think, as we said before, if you're not willing to pick it, the problem is it just feels so bad to ban Ahri when there are just when there are other champions that deserve. Barry is just not one of those champions that wow, we need to ban her. But it's just too comfortable for Ruiz. Naya is just way too comfortable for Ruiz. I think that's the problem. If they're not comfortable dealing with it, they need to maybe just say, well, let's make him less comfortable. And that would be my game plan potentially heading in here.
Maybe picking it away, but maybe Queso looks to prioritize. See if it does become that last ban. The bans following everything that we have seen in the drafts before, all the way up to number 5. Last one coming out of Game Lord is going to be the interesting one. Will it be the Ahri? No, it's the Galio, the one that we saw in game 1 that still they appear fearful of, even though it didn't feel too impactful back then.
No, absolutely. I don't really feel like the Galio was a strong combo, but whenever you have Camille left open, I do think Galio is important to ban because the Camille-Galio combo itself is really strong, and we know that Ruiz will play it. So I think, you've left Camille open here. You ban one of the 2. Random, he backs himself. Random backs himself in this matchup. I don't think that Random played the matchup the best way. I just want to explain the reasoning. You can actually riposte Hextech Ultimatum. It's a very easy ultimate to riposte, and therefore you just completely nullify the core part of Camille's kit. You can also riposte the hook shot as well. So it's very easy for Fiora to get the edge in this matchup. We'll see the Ahri locked in for Ruiz again here. We're going to see the Xayah.
The same draft. Not until the Xayah Rakan.
Yeah, the Xayah Rakan comes through. It's interesting because Xayah and Rakan used to be the Team Queso bot lane. Like, they would only play Xayah Rakan. I don't remember the last Origin series. We pretty much just saw exclusively Xayah Rakan from Team Queso. But that will be locked away here by Game Lord. It means we'll just see a Nami and a Kai'Sa again. It is exactly the same draft from Team Queso. Game Lord have switched it up, though. They're going to pick up the Diana here, which I actually like a bit more. It gives them a bit more solid team fight presence. I don't think they really had that with the Zed, and I think one of the places that they were lacking was in these pure kind of more hectic team fights. So I think themselves Diana gives them a really solid team fight tool that will effectively increase their odds of winning out in 5v5s.
Big worry for me is always going to be down to dealing with that pick potential. And right now, I'm not seeing a huge amount that says we're safe from it, but hopefully the Xayah Rakan at least moves in towards that. Game is ready. Let's get into the last game of this best of 3 and see who walks away the winner. We said after game 1, the winners have to change nothing. Queso have kept it identical, but the one, as you say, coming in with some fresh ideas to hopefully help them get the dub in this 3rd game.
And that will be important for Game Lord as well. And not that this really changes this things. I think we have all of our 6 teams qualified. But for Game Lord, it's more about that option to take wing at NT, because that will be important, I think, for Game Lord going into future tournaments and future stages of the Origin series. You get that chance to knock a chip off their shoulder. And I think is really what we're playing for here. It's really kind of playing for bragging rights of best in Europe heading into those all-important later stages of the Origin series.
Really. For me, it's going to be about this bot lane and seeing how they do. I mean, you know me and Diana. I don't make any secrets that I love Diana. I'm a main champion in the league for years. Played her a ton in this game as well. So excited to see what can be done in this game. And she has kind of not so much bounced up and down in popularity. She had, of course, the bust that came through the help try in the jungle, then got taken out for a short while. Now seeing her crawling back in a couple of games today. On the side of Cut over in Group C, had an absolute field day with her in their first game. How do you think it's that comp in particular?
I think it stacks well. I mean, you would know as a Diana one trick kind of where you feel comfortable, but I don't see many good answers apart from maybe, you know, like a wave, you know, really dealing with Diana. If Diana finds a good flank here, I think that she's got a lot of short range champions to exploit with her ultimate. This is really nice, though.
It's the same again. It's the aggression coming in from Zepter in the early game. Final hit, gets away with it. All Tower won't quite put him down to 0, but takes him pretty dangerously close. Another aggression coming out of the Lee Sin, the same as we saw, but in the mid game in the previous game.
They're going to stay. Oh my god, they're greeding for the wave. they're greeding so it can't get frozen, but you can see that Andre's on this top side. I mean, he's going for it.
I mean, trying to see what he can do with here as well. Yep, nothing massive coming out of it outside of Zepter going down. I thought for a second you might see a second roll onto the Fiora, but it is the trade they were looking for.
It's greeded. They hard greeded for the wave here. I mean, Andre could very easily double scuttle, and that is a big like portion of the game where Lee Sin is supposed to have the edge over Kha'Zix, and now Kha'Zix, especially with the Ahri already setting up, have a straight up 2v2 here.
I mean, how is Memorize not dead? He got rooted down at about 5 HP, but the heal came through clutch. Flash for live. Fortunate, I think, if you're the Nami here, but it's enough. And now the focus turns in towards the Scuttle Crab, which I believe got picked up by Andre. Really wants to stick around for this one at least a little bit longer and see what he can do. But be wary, of course, as Eva's now starting to hit level 5. I think Zepter must have missed level, by the way.
He hasn't picked up his ultimate. Oh my god, Zepter didn't pick up his ultimate.
That is,
he did smite the right. This is that earlier play. I wouldn't really say it's much to write home about, just an overextended Acolyte, and Zepter managed to get that cheeky last hit on him. Picks up level 4, which is nice, pretty safely from this tower. But they greeded for the wave. I get why they greeded for the wave. By the way, they greeded for it. They didn't want the Acolyte's Camille to freeze, but it meant that Andre was able to find that the small angle and go for the engage.
Makes sense indeed. All right. Those things currently sit. Again, very little between the two teams in terms of gold as we approach that first straight coming online. Engage coming in on the box side. Memorized again. The target. Flash, but nice dodge away from Zepter's Q. Will keep him alive and healthy. Barely having to expend anything there. Health, resources to keep himself alive as we now turn our attention towards that Drake coming up in about 20 seconds. The bot lane with Game Lord saying it's time to go back. Let's go spend. And the same story can be said for Acolyte up top. So I imagine maybe look come for a join, just return back for a second. Maybe he doesn't want to be a part of this dragon fight then.
I think doing either top lane or either Baron laner is too dragon fight right now. I think Camille infinitely more useful in a 5v5 scenario, but obviously they don't want to give any opportunity for Fiora to push that wave and potentially hit the tier 1. It looks like it's going to be a Rift Herald focus for Andre here. It's Mountain Dragon, and I would wager that the Rift Herald is the more important objective. And unfortunately, again, Game Lord's slow to react. They may even just struggle here.
One of those where Soul Titan scamper around. Let's forget about the Drake entirely. And in comes the Diana, misses that ult entirely. No one caught inside the area. No one sucked into the spiral. Andre fleeing for his life, and now Rue's being connected. Zepter looking pretty low. Did take a tower shot on the way out, but ground gained. My God, that was weird to say. Ground gained by Game Lord. There we go. We got there in the end.
Yeah, a little bit of a tongue twister here. Might end up seeing Acolyte drop down, but at least it'll be potential first tower. They'll get it. Little kick from Zepter. At least if they take the first tower of the game, they can feel comfortable losing that Rift Herald, but they are, of course, giving up bot lane and bot side, which means a very easy Mountain Dragon picked up here. But the freest Mountain Dragon you'll ever get, as well as the Redemption, was by himself, and he will drop. And they may even pick up a tower in this bot lane as well.
Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Beautiful stuff. Now, that's what more they can turn it into. You found yourself the tower. Yes, Redemption is down, but what do you make happen next? Sure, with the Dracons right now fighting their way back in, still the gold staying incredibly close between the two. Now pulled about 500 ahead, but again, it's that close still that it's really going to take our first big decisive fight, seeing when then starts to fall.
It definitely feels like Kai'Sa are in comfort though. They've got both big neutral objectives here. Nothing too crazy. Redemption just caught out by himself. Use that Kai'Sa ultimate position nicely. Pick up an isolated Icathian Rain. What is that? It's not Icathian Rain. What the hell is that ability called, Derry?
Icathian Rain for who?
The Kai'Sa's Icathian made that. I'm gonna have to Google it. It's gonna annoy me.
You're thinking of Cogmore's ultimate there off the back, aren't you?
That's living artillery. I don't know what.
This is the name of his passive, Cogmore's
It's passive, yeah. Totally going to have to Google this. I'm sorry.
It's something missiles. Void.
It's literally a Cathian Rain. I doubted myself, and it was a Cathian Rain.
And you debated me in the process.
I doubted myself. I was right the first time. Anyway, to the Rift Herald here mid. It shows you the power of this objective.
Top lane, though. Also being rinsed down because you've got the Diana and the Elise in there. They will just as well. In fact, they get the second one before the mid lane falls. Sure, this should also come down for the side of Keizo. There we go. They go for the engage at the back of it, trying to lock one down. Random, stuck inside the Hextech ultimatum, but still makes it out alive. Same can be said as well for Show. They've again battered and bruised, but good survival coming out of Game Lord.
Technically 2 towers for 1 though, so you would say in favor of Team Queso here. They also have cracked open that mid lane. That means complete access, unbridled access to the jungle from Game Lord, and I think realistically that's that Game Lord will now have, especially versus a very heavy pick comp like a Nami, Ari Nation. You now have to be so careful. You have to invest a lot of resources, defensive vision, and that means you don't get resources to invest on. And that's the problem that you'll now have. And that really is why you to at least take some towers in mid and bot and try and even that pressure middle side of the map.
Alrighty. Things now calm down for at least a couple of seconds. There's no big objectives yet. You're seeing a bit of a scrap set up around this bottom tower. The jump in from Andre. Not quite where he wanted to go, I think, but they still find themselves a kill. Sorely Show, the next one to fall down. Do they flash over the wall? Yes, they do. Ruiz in pursuit, but Show equally flashing away. Game Lord lose one down there at Scoundrel, overcommitting a little for that bot lane tower.
Yeah, you can see they're desperate to try and get some kind of objectives here. And again, Game Lord in a rough spot. They had a relatively strong early game, but when it comes to decision-making around objectives, they have been much inferior to Team Queso. I think Queso have made the much stronger decisions. I think they've played out their objectives well. I also think, giving the comfort over to Team Queso clearly has been an error for Game. Andre on his Kha'Zix, that will be that's a nice here though onto Ruiz.
Yeah, I mean the that you want to catch, they know with no flash, no ultimate on side, because he flashed after Show alongside the ultimate. They knew that if they made it work in time, and they've done it in good time, because in about 20 seconds or so, ultimate will be back online. And here's how it started as well. Only the 1 kill. A little bit, I feel, of an overcommitment coming in from the side of Game Lord again. He was the one that ultimately led to Ruiz dying about 30 seconds later.
We haven't really seen any big, strong 5v5s either, which is why I think this Diana was actually drafted. I feel like, they have that stronger straight-up 5v5 team fight or a sort of team-wide CC to land. Oh, goodness, this is disaster. Again.
We were just here, like, seconds ago, guys. What's going on? They're looking to get themselves away. The potential support come hanging off to the side. They're hoping they can pick something out here, because that might be what's just about to happen. Ruiz has already gone through the ultimate, has no flash, and they're turning around. They want to burn through the Ari before anything else kicks off, and they will find one back. Once should turn into a second as out. Andre has arrived as well. They'll try they can, but it's 3 versus 2 here. And finally, the Diana comes. The question is, can she find anything? I imagine not in this 3 versus 3. It's going to require in-point precision planning of the ultimate here to really switch this one back. But I imagine Game Lord, as they've done now, will back away and say, leave that one for later.
I think they had a lot of CC. You had way more CC than Team Queso had available to you at that time. And if you landed good, Rakan knock up, if you get a really big dive, probably an option to look for the 3v3 in that scenario. Right here, though, Memorize, I think, unfortunately, this is always a very risky play to make. As a flash bubbling, it's quite an inconsistent piece of CC to land, and so that's easy with that riposte to get in and burst out as support. I think obviously Zef had to sacrifice himself. It's a shame that she was able to pick up the knock up onto the Kha'Zix there. It might have been able to take out Andre and make it easier for them to contest that dragon, but as it stands, another neutral objective in case though.
One of those now, maybe the catch out to Andre as well. He flashes away, he does everything he can to get away. Forced out the ultimate from Show. Not enough, of course, that he finds himself off the back of it. I'm looking very closely at this Diana, by the way, just finishing off that about 30 seconds ago or so, and it's been sat in for the majority of the game, farming away the Krugs whenever they come up. Top lane 2, just doing all they can, as much gold on side as they can, almost joint richest in the game, but of course, currently falling on at the side of Kaiser, where the most of the money does sit on those carries outside of Ruiz.
Yeah, and I think especially Ibu, hero of this series on this Kaiser, has found some really, really important plays in these team fights. Really just the silent assassin. He hasn't really taken the spotlight because obviously some of the other members of his team have been making the flashy plays, but this Kaiser has kind of stepped up and been that consistent damage source. He's been pretty much unshakable, I think, when it comes to some of these team fights. But this is going to be a very, very risky Baron start. There is a teleport available from Acolyte, but The ward will spot them out, and you can see that Game Lord are not going to let that one go for.
Top lane is having a bit of a scrap in the river as well, as they are both on their way after exchanging a couple of slaps, but not enough for either side to be particularly threatened. Everyone going back to farming, and we've kind of hit that point between the mid game and the late game where it's like, okay, we know items are about to start coming online, get ourselves over invested. Once we have 1 or 2 items on side, the TPs come out of his, by the way, that's when, you know, you can start thinking about those more, you know, the more scrappy team fights that ultimately start leading to an Ibis falling down.
But you can just see how much of an effect the early towers being taken mid has had on Game Lord's ability to control the map. I don't remember the last time past the river. They've been stuck in their own jungle, and they're having to cautiously maneuver up. I mean, you need only look at the vision control to show you how much there is lacking for Game Lord right now, especially to eat away at these jungle camps as well. Getting that experience, it's a bit of a risky one.
All right, here we go. Massive fight coming back of the engaged. Zephyr and Redemption a bit low towards the back. Want to be careful they don't get focused out too hard. Out comes the Feathers to do any significant damage or even keep himself safe, as no one was really aggressive. Great kick back onto Ibu. Zonyas catch him out with the Crescent as well. Massive damage coming through. Double knock up in the back line as the Zonyas comes out for the Diana. Everyone's looking so low again, but once more it's Kaizo walking away with flashing health bars. The other side falling down for it, Scoundrel. Ibu the only one being traded back on the other side. A massive win for the side of Kaizo.
Why does it feel like Game Lord are so slow to react in team? I don't know if we're going to get an option to look back at that fight, but 4 members out by themselves to the blue side. Who were they backing away from? Why were they not just committing? There's a big engage here, though.
In the eventual walk away with the Baron, which is the key one they were looking to pick up a couple more members. Stagger the respawns coming out for the side of Game Lord. The heal in effect, but cut through 4 members worth of damage. That's a huge advantage for Kaizo, because now with 5 players again, that Drake's about to come online. Maybe a fight that Game Lord didn't want to take it, Scoundrel.
I don't think though. I think it's risky to try and sort of randomly approach the Baron without your jungler as well. I get the idea, maybe there were HP bars, maybe you could have made something happen, but this Diana hasn't been effective to me. Like he's been holding his ultimate. He hasn't been trying to get into the middle. Like what I really wanted to see from Vejos on this Diana, like as soon as the opportunity arises, jump into the fight and sound like it was an effective ultimate, but it was a late ultimate team fight, and that's a lot of damage onto Zephyr here.
Miz trying to score the way at the back and caught in the back line with the Diana, but out damaging her at this point. The kill coming in onto Diana. Ibu's still alive. They want to finish him off, but they cannot make it happen. Kaizo charging one. Andre does get traded out, but they were the kills they're looking for. Top side, it's a scrap as well. Running away bruised and battered. The Fiora basically at full HP, but nothing that Kaizo will concern themselves with, as right now she is all that stands between them and a couple of inhibitor towers going down.
Why does it just feel like Game can't team fight these last 2 games? It has just felt like the way they've approached these team lackluster, and Team Kaizo now, they are certainly booking themselves a rematch with NTNT in a 5 tomorrow. I don't really see a good way, even if this fight goes in the favor of Game Lord, that they actually get their way back in. It's left on the Nexus. It looks like it's not going to happen, Derry. BK's though locking themselves in to that top bracket NTNT.
It's one of those that you look at it, and we came in asking the question of which of these 2 teams is strong. Found out for the 2nd time this month. Kaizo, the ones coming out the victors. Good series, I think, at points, but equally some really scrappy and messy parts need to be worked on before we get to that championship at Scoundrel.
I think Game Lord have both of these teams have been. I think Kaizo have quietly made their statements over the last couple of Origin series, but I think Game Lord, unfortunately, they started off I think as the favorites for Origin series, but have really been exposed over the course of the last few monthly finals, and I think unfortunately there will be a lot of lessons for Game Lord to reflect on as they head towards the later stages of the tournament.
Replay's playing back out here as well. It has been one of those fun series. We've had a really interesting one so far today. Some throws in the middle. I'll say in today, it has of course been our last game that's just been completed, but a couple of throwing games across the board. We will be having a chat with 69 from Cut very shortly as well in an interview. This one though, I think I'm looking forward to seeing how tomorrow, but from what we've seen today, do you see them bringing down NTNT tomorrow?
No, not really. I think NTNT to let Team Kaizo get away with draft comfort picks like this, because I think realistically, look at Team Kaizo's draft. It's not actually that like a lot of these picks are actually pretty weak in a if you compare it to what we know from League of Legends PC, and I know the meta's not entirely the same. Things like Kha'Zix and Ahri are quite easily exposed competitive play, and I think unfortunately Game Lord just they're somehow letting Team Kaizo get away with these styles of picks. comfortable for Team Queso, and Queso are just able to just make them work because it is comfort for them. But I think versus NTNT, I think they're too good to make these picks look as strong as they did in this series.
Yeah, a lot of looking up to do to NTNT, and despite what their name says, very an ironic one. There is bucket loads of talent on that team that many need to be trying to compete with. Silent Killer in this third game, one that we touched on here, and really in the prior two games, it was more, can you just survive against the onslaught coming in from all directions? It felt this one, you really started to see him shine as a carry.
Yeah, I think Ibu and Memorized had some questions over them over the last few Origin series, but I think they've slowly been answering them, especially Ibu. Ibu's Kai'Sa looked really strong. I think it was Memorized Nami had a lot of really influential bubbles, which I can tell you as a Nami player, difficult to make happen on a consistent basis. I would say that Nami bubble is one of the most inconsistent pieces of crowd control to land in the game, and so to be able to actually be effective is really nice. But overall, I think Team Queso, one weakness that we've seen, obviously a strength in this series, is that they're quite reliant on certain picks, I think, to feel competitive in a match. And I think that's something that they will need to try and adjust heading into that series tomorrow, because I think NTNT have got a wide range of picks that they perform adequately on. They've got a lot of different styles of comps that they can make work for them. And in general, I think match them where Queso is strong. Like Queso is generally quite strong in jungle. I think honestly NTNT is stronger in jungle, and I think also the bot lane is a far higher caliber from NTNT as well, and they won't kind of let the Team Queso bot lane get away with as much as they did in this series.
Lots to look forward to tomorrow, I'm sure. At the brackets as well, starting with Group A, we will work our way through, so in case you have missed anything from tonight, you can currently see how things square up. After that victory for Queso, they do face off against No Team, No Talent in the best of 5 final tomorrow to determine who walks away as the August winner. I think a line and path through the journey so far for No Team, No Talent, but that rematch tomorrow, one that I'm sorely looking forward to at Scoundrel.
I think it's going to be a banger. I'm very excited for you can see this is the lower bracket on Group A here. Big ups to Team Singularity, by the way. Actually getting to a top 4 position here is a really result for them. I know it doesn't really give them anything in terms of chances of qualifying for the later stages of the tournament, but it's a really for Singularity, especially with the roster shuffles that they've had coming into this particular tournament. I think they'll be pretty happy with a top 4 finish next to Team Queso, Game Lord, and NTNT.
Let's take a look at Group B as well. The most surprising tournament of the bunch, I think. No Na'Vi, no Footballist, no Unicorns of Love in the final. Supermassive Blaze, who have truly blazed their way through this bracket, coming up against Bal Esport in that final tomorrow.
Wait, Unicorns of Love got knocked out in the second round of the losers bracket?
Yes.
My gosh, I somehow missed that. That's actually pretty nutty. What I would say though is that I think Bal absolutely did for Na'Vi a favor. I think that Bal are basically winning their series versus ROG essentially confirmed Na'Vi for a top 2 spot in this group. Na'Vi also took the fate out of their own hands when they unfortunately knocked themselves out early on as well.
Absolutely. Here's Group C as a quick roundup as well. Cut, despite having a bit of a scrappy start along with Sunlight Team, the 2 favourites of this group did start out rough, but Cut with the lower bracket run, come back into and 3-0 GK Esports, the team that they said they wanted to get revenge on. They did it at Scoundrel and looked pretty sharp in the process.
Are they back-to-back Group C winners? I think Cut have
won one of them, I think.
Yeah, I think
they
you
were
could be
slightly
right.
ahead coming into this month.
Yeah. Well, I think it's still a strong performance from Cut. I think they've been strong contenders in Group C overall, so pretty impressed with them and the way they performed in Group C. And I think they have managed to sneak in towards those later stages.
They have indeed. Well, you know what? We've got a very nice interview plan with 69 from Cut joining us here for a quick chat about their journey through Group C. Now, I've got first and foremost, 69. What the hell went on this month? Sunlight going out early, you guys getting dropped to the lower bracket. Did anyone expect that? Go it? You can't hear us.
I don't think. I think we just got to check. I don't think you can hear us right now. 69, can you hear us? Nope, can't.
I'm muted on Hangouts. Where is he? Just him.
He looks happy. He looks happy. You know, that's the main thing. He's chilling. He's looking happy. He's he's happy that they've qualified for the later stages of the tournament. I mean, that's good. That's good. Unfortunately, we can't get him in for an interview. We had some tech issues there, as you've been able to see. But nonetheless, it's nice to see his face and nice to see some representation from Group C as well. Obviously the region of the 3 that were sort of included in the Origin series, and I think it's going to be an We haven't really had the chance to explore relative group power, but obviously as we get towards the later stages of the Origin series, we will be able to see those kind of storylines unfold, and it will be interesting to see where Group C ends up, compared to Group B and Group A. I think most people pegging Group A as the most competitive group that we have here, but obviously surprises can always happen when it comes to international play.
As these highlights play out, then let's talk about that a little bit further, because there are 6 teams going through to the championship, 3 teams from Group A, 2 from B, as you say, and then Cut coming in from Group C. It's been interesting seeing how things have evolved. We had some really spicy potential outcomes looking at yesterday, where UOL might not make it through Group B, for example, or Cut or Sunlight was going to come down to a best-of-5 grand final to see who. Ultimately, it was Cut in C that made their way out. As you see in this game playing back out on your screen, that best-of-5 grand final for Group C that started did result in the 3-0 coming out for Cut.
Yeah, and I think Cut, they sort of put their mark down on this series. They clearly look like the more dominant team. And this was the series that was really surprising, though. This ROG series, where I think, there was a chance to knock Na'Vi out, especially if ROG were able to win this series. So this was a really important one because they had their fate in their own hands, BK ROG. If they won this and then won Group B, they were going to the finals. But unfortunately, they weren't able to make it out. And Bal with the Kingmakers here, they allowed Na'Vi that spot in Group B.
Yeah, we'll be owing them a few favours, I'm sure, in the future with the way that one shaped up. And then, of course, when we step across into Group A in a moment, you'll see how that one panned out as well, in case you missed the game. I mentioned about the Diana, by the way. Seeing that coming through out of Bal, always exciting to see how the different use cases are being brought out for it across the groups. In this Jarvan, in the final game, an absolute terror. That Cataclysm wrecked them in that final fight.
Yeah, it really did. And I think one of the problems that I had overall in this particular series with Team Queso and Gamelord was just that Gamelord didn't really feel like they were ever team fighting properly. They were never setting up for objectives properly. They felt really slow to react in team fights. I feel like they played with a little bit too much caution in some of these team fight situations as well as honestly just making silly mistakes. Team fight that I specifically think could have gone massively in favor of Gamelord, but if you just watched where they all back off, you could see 4 of them. Okay, it just cut away. 4 of them were by themselves in Blue Star Jungle. They could have more heavily. I think they could have heavily committed, especially with that Diana ultimate being available. But they just didn't do it. And in case so on these comfortable drafts, were able to knock them out in a pretty convincing fashion over the last 2 games.
Absolutely. Well, that's pretty much all of today's games concluded. Tomorrow, we best-of-5 grand finals to come. Group A and Group B, still plenty to look forward to. And even though, of course, our top 6 teams have already qualified for the championship at this point, tomorrow is always worth tuning in. Preview of what's going on here in the Origin series, because after tomorrow, that's it, Scoundrel. That's it. 3 months of Origin series done and dusted.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been super excited to see how the wider EMEA region is able to compete at the high level in the Origin series. It's really great to see competitive Wild come to our region as well. It has already been doing really well over in Southeast Asia. We're starting to see, Korean and Chinese tournaments pop up. North America has now got its circuit on the go. We're seeing a lot of South American little circuits up as well. So you're really starting to see some global presence in Wild Rift esports, and it's just great to see it alive and well in EMEA, and especially with some really high level of competition as well.
Plenty more to come, I'm sure. But that is all for us today. From myself, Scoundrel, Riku, Yuka, and the production team behind the scenes. We hope you had a good show, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow for 2 killer best-of-5 grand finals. But until then, good night.